Jeg skal lige tjekke, at den ikke også transkriberer. Det er sådan noget nyt, den er begyndt på. Det tror jeg ikke. Godt. So our next speaker is online, and we fixed all the technical stuff, so Ulla is almost ready to present. So very welcome, Ulla Damgaard-Sorensen. She's a lead psychologist and work for the Center of Digital Psychiatry. And she will tell us a bit about binge eating disorder that we have mentioned several times, both yesterday and today. So Ulla, please go ahead.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for having me present to you here live from Odense region of South Denmark well, nearby you. I believe you're all in Haderslev. My name is Ulla Damgaard-Sorensen, and I'm a lead clinical psychologist for the digital psychology service here at Center for Digital Psychology. We cover both the region, and we deliver services within the region of South Denmark, but also cover national assignments. My background is as a clinician, but for the past 10 years or so, I've been keen on driving service developments, and I've been here at Internet Psykiatrien, which is the formal name of the clinic, for the past nearly 5 years. My outline today, I wish to talk to you about. I just need to see how I can swap the slide, and maybe this was. Let me just, so that's it. Beg your pardon. Let's just see if yeah, this is always a classic error. There we are. Okay, it's all fine. I think I changed and tried to see if I could see you, the listeners. I can't. But now, again, I'm in control of the PowerPoint. The slides will be available for you. And here's a live cam, so I can actually see the room. So thank you very much. And please, Maya and Charlotte, gather questions from... yes, I can hear you.
Yes, if you can just repeat, because I tried to add my webcam so that you could see us, but I shouldn't move my laptop, so you won't be able to see us. Sorry for that.
That's thanks for trying, and meanwhile, as I said, my slides will be available to share, and my details in terms of contact are also within, so you're very welcome to reach out later on. But as I mentioned today, I will briefly just introduce you very briefly to the center, and then to the clinic, where we drive the formal or the most widely developed service, which is internet-based therapy for anxiety and depression. And I've brought some of the learning points from this service along to my presentation today for you to think about scaling, because the BD intervention that I'll share with you, as you will see, is very is at the beginning. So I'll give you thoughts, food for thoughts, in terms of both starting up services, but also thinking about the implications and the possible potential of digital services delivered through internet-based therapies. We have emerging data, so I'll share some of that with you, and I've also included some on, again, the large-scale delivery of anxiety and depression programs, so you can, again, compare and see what a few years can make a difference. In terms of eating disorders, I suppose it's pertinent to add that this is a target group that is often not seen, or when they're seen in mental health settings, it's either because they are morbidly at a level of crisis where they risk dying, either because of underweight or overweight. So eating disorders is becoming an increasingly a problem in Western European countries, and in fact also in other parts of the world. So binge eating disorder is what I'm concentrating on today, but my experience from these early stages is that we're dealing with a paradigm that is potentially offering a lot of good solutions for other target groups than just binge eating. So hope you will bear this in mind, that the focus will be on binge eating. Within the Center of Digital Psychiatry, we work from the tenets of the step care model. I hope you're mindful of it. This means that our early interventions are based at preventative methods, and that includes public knowledge, is spreading psychoeducational material about people's mental well-being, and signs of when they're not maybe psychologically well, and when the functioning becomes distressing, so that they are in need of more help, and that leads to the early intervention, or sort of the second step of the ladder, which is where the internet-based therapies place itself. We think of treatment, the step of treatment being both blended care, which can be offered in combination with a video screen, and internet-based therapies, or traditional therapies where you meet in face-to-face. And this is probably the one that you're most familiar with, both individually and in group settings. And then we talk about the highest step of the ladder being the specialized treatments. And so in essence, we're trying to, with the lower steps, to reach most of the population, so that we are only concentrating and setting our efforts in at the higher ladder, the higher steps in the ladder, to a very small and very focused population or target group, those who require typically more integrated and very highly specialized services in order to get better. At the Center for Digital Therapy, we are providing digital mental health services at scale, and we work from an evidence-based practice, always keen to figure out and using the best practice, so having always an eye on what works for whom. We have increasingly become aware of the gaps in implementing digital mental health care in terms of training staff, but also educating patients. And indeed, there's an add-on in terms of not just training staff, but also thinking about maintaining healthy workforces who deliver digital mental health services. Here's our team, and within this team, 3 of the psychologists offer 1 full-time position to the binge eating disorder service. The rest deliver services for anxiety and depression, and for Cool Minds, which is an anxiety program for youths 12 plus, which is currently an RCT that we are developing, and VR, virtual reality for social phobia experiment, also in the trial stage. The team consisted of 7 people when I arrived. Now you see it's grown, and this too has also been the case for the center. We now number more than 80 multi professionals. So our backgrounds are a plethora of backgrounds: engineers, data managers, graphic designers, journalists. So when we are developing digital services, we need to think about all aspects of developing the intervention, not just maybe our traditional thoughts around digital care, which, mental health care, which would be the mental health professional and the clinicians and the therapist. However, it's a much broader pool of professional identities that map out, I suppose, the digital services. It is pertinent that we are considering digital care pathways, and I hope that my talk today will help you broaden your understanding of the topic, and also see that there are, although limitations, a lot of hope to be gained from our preliminary work. It's all about accessing care. It's all about ensuring that we get and set in early, and the earlier we set in, the less chronic a problem will become. And certainly in eating disorders, my experience is also the less of a burden in terms of cost on all other paths, all other parts of life, in terms of comorbid physical diseases. Could be diabetes, could be heart difficulties. There may also be issues around functionality, going to work, completing education. So there are lots of stigma within this group of people as well. So this is why we suppose that digital intervention may be particularly beneficial in reaching out to a group of people who have become maybe isolated in their silent suffering. I'm not going to go into this, but this is a map for your perusal at a later stage when you look over these slides. So at the clinic, if you look at the bottom three, as I mentioned, we have at the far left, this is the web page for the Internet Psychiatry, which is the site where we have applicants apply for anxiety and depression programs. In the middle, bottom middle, you will see the online treatment for the BED, binge eating disorder, and it's in the headline highlighting what the ICAT, the ICBD model is. It suggests that we're helping people working online who suffers from BED with writing support from a psychologist. And this is really the tenets of how we define internet-based therapies in this current or in this format. I wanted to just show you briefly what can happen when we start to think about scaling up. These are numbers from our mental health service, ICBT, for adults with anxiety and depression. Back in 22, we saw just over 2,100 patients. And this is seeing them for clinical interview, and then making assessment as to whether they fit criteria for inclusion in the behavioral program, in the program. So 22 became 23. We grew to 2,500, and really without any sort of effort in terms of PR, or the only place where we have centered our efforts are with our general practitioners, people who refer patients, and this is still at the early stages of helping health surgeries, health practitioners to become noticeable that we're here and help patients direct their way. But already we grew by 400. This year, on extended funds from the government, we've seen a growth of already hitting what we managed to achieve all of last year. So in 3 years, and still without massive amounts on PR, we are introducing and including more and more Danes. So this is a picture that I suppose is also applicable to patients suffering from eating disorders, albeit at a smaller scale because of the target group being smaller. But it's an exponential rise in applications. And what is noteworthy is that in this year, 24, we started to use Google advertising, and we see that has an immediate effect. And referrals are received online through a free application. So it means we attract a lot of Danes who themselves make a decision as to whether they fit our service. But just to highlight that there is great promise within the online world, such as Google advertisement. The iBed program is actually a trial program that's running for 4 years, and it's funded by the Danish government. We have 3 sites in the region of South Denmark. One site is our current site, which is the iBed, and this is an internet-based program for 20 weeks for low to severe BD, no comorbidity. I'll address the inclusion criteria a little more in detail later, and if you have questions, please I'll take them at the end as well. The second site is a group therapy offered through a clinic at the University Hospital of Odense, and the third site is offered through a secondary mental health care team, also based in Odense, but taking referrals throughout the region, and they work with with those patients who suffer from comorbid mental health difficulties, such as maybe a personality disorder as well. Our inclusion criteria, as I mentioned, we actually include severe binge eating disorder, but it's through self-reported, and so there's always some subjectivity around our screening procedure. But I suppose self-referrals include their weight, their height, their BMI, but again, as self-reported measures. We don't take extreme levels of binge eating disorder. Those we would reason go to the 4th tier, the ladder, which is the secondary mental health care unit. When we screen our patients, and we screen them all through an application that the client fills out in their own space and time at home, online, and send to us. And our turnaround is very fast. We'll have a response within typically a week. We screen the application for motivation, for the readiness, and we are keen to ask about the client's previous treatment attempts and successes. We also explore the identify goals. What is it that the patient wants and is looking to change, and within that realm also figuring out whether there have been attempts to either lose weight through gastric band operations, or other weight loss or weight controlling therapies, and of course Wegovy. I will return to Wegovy, and you probably all know of the great results from Novo Nordisk, and maybe you see it in your populations and settings as well. We certainly have seen a change. But as I say, for us, it's important that we screen very thoroughly to obtain certainty that the candidate is both able and willing to engage in a written engagement, and is indeed has the I suppose the right amount of motivation and ability to undertake such at times quite focused piece of work, dedicated piece of work. So we found that patients who actually really are still struggling with wanting to lose weight, who are not ready to look at the underlying reasons and the underlying motivations guiding the patient's motivation for eating dysfunctionally. Those are clients who we are learning do not fare well in such a distanced therapeutic relationship, because it's very hard to work with motivation, and you stand a greater chance of doing that if you have in a more traditional way of for example, seeing the patient. We're not ruling out that this could be obtained through maybe a blended approach, but currently our approach is to have no contact other than through writing with the patient. So that's the foundation or the framework, so to speak. We also, in order to gauge whether this level and ability and motivation is sufficient, we ask for demographic information such as relationship, job history, insights. We also have the patients take photos of the 2 last meals that they were having, and this is something we've introduced only this last year to help us make better decisions in our screening procedure. We don't include people who suffer from comorbidity. However, again, when we don't face people, and this is really quite extraordinary, we're not seeing patients face to face. This is an on paper exercise, and it's quite groundbreaking, I suppose. But this is also why we'd rather be conservative in including patients, and certainly people who are at risk of crisis behavior or suicidal ideation. Those we exclude on the basis that they need to be seeing professionals closer to the private or to their daily lives. This I've not translated, but I thought it might be nice. So the far left, we have the from the flow of the applicant from sending off the application, and then the application is screened through us, the clinical psychologists, and then it's entering into treatment, and that treatment you either complete before time or you drop out. And we have this notion of completing before time, completing faster or before planned. And this is a notion that came from the service that we developed with anxiety and depression. We've reasoned that there is a high rate of dropout in internet-based therapies, and somehow I wasn't keen on accepting high levels of dropout. I'd rather that we have a clinical practice where we elicit a high level of engagement from the client. So that also means that from the outset, we're very clear about contracting. So patients know that they have to be active, and if they aren't active through writing and through completing assignments, the therapist will ask them what's going on, will remind them of the contract in a compassionate, in a caring manner. But the rationale is really about securing that we keep the finger on the pulse, so to speak, that we are able to respond, and certainly to cases where there's maybe signs of deterioration, or where it was obvious that this level of intervention just wasn't adequate. We'd much rather have an ending that's formalized through writing and an acceptance, a mutual acceptance from the client and the therapist. I hope you can understand how we are working with this. So this means that we have lowered our dropout, but we have a group of people who stopped before time, and some of these stopped because they just got better, and this is helpful because we didn't find these in our earlier dropout figures. But some stopped simply because they realized, however motivated they were, because this was exactly the intervention that was going to make everything come true for their needs, realizing that actually they needed something else, or it wasn't adequate. So this is a clinical practice experience that we've carried over to working with the binge eating disordered population as well. The program is cognitive behavioral therapy. So most of you will know, and it follows the leading therapist on eating disorders stages. So we introduce to the format, we psychoeducate, we identify targets for change, and we work on motivation. we also work on ending the attachment with the dysfunctional eating. So saying goodbye to binge eating, getting ready to more balanced and acceptable views of food and oneself in interaction with food. We of course address the cognitive elements of their lives, eating behavior and general life, exploring what the underlying meanings driving the binge eating is about. And most of you will know that shame, high levels of self-criticalness, high levels of punitive views of oneself are abundant in this group of people. So it's important to address, I suppose, those very distorted views of self that may have developed from very early on and somehow need to be undone. They need to be fought against and were challenged, so that more adaptable views and thoughts can ensue. So through this, I suppose there turns up to be a clear pattern around the need to binge, the urgency, and how that has become a pattern, a cycle for the patient. And so they move on to developing new ways of and experimenting with new behaviors. Oh, I see there's a spelling. We end up 2 spelling mistakes, relapse prevention, and then we work with the ending. So this is a 20-week standardized program where the therapist follows the patient, and there are set assignments. And these assignments are all related to the standardized modules. They complete measures throughout, both pre and post, but also, tracking the mood and tracking changes in mood during the intervention. Does it work? Well, in our experience, it does. It doesn't work for everybody. But it works because when you have a good fit between, I suppose, a clinical presentation and a good contract, then we found, and research is showing this, and we can validate this, that there develops a therapeutic relationship that can be seen as strong as the one we see in face-to-face engagements. And this is something that ponders clinical professionals, because we all thought at one point that actually it couldn't be as strong as when you do something face to face. It can. But of course, it's about being very clear about the boundaries and the setup of the program. We've had experiences of developing earlier modules and found them to be out of time, out of focus for what the lived experience or the user needed and wanted, and what they were feeling motivated by. So it's a challenge to develop, I suppose, tools that are acceptable and that clients take on board. But it works when you have a therapeutic relationship where the patient works along with the assignments and reaches out in a chat version to the psychologist if things pop up. So within the right boundaries, you can set up an intervention that will reach many more, will require less time, and actually will help people to feel that they are taking back controls of their eating and controls of their lives. Here are just a few bits. This is an outline in Danish again, but the standardized module is consisting of 23 sessions. It's a lot of sessions. Some of them are also about the monitoring, so the checks as they go along. But it outlines the overview that I showed you on the 2 prior slides. The graphics I've talked a little bit about. So in close liaison and cooperation with our colleagues in the center, we've developed these sort of the thread, and this is actually a little bit of the same. You can see the same graphic sort of signature, if you will, or identity, both in our binge eating disorder programs, but also in the programs for anxiety, for adults with anxiety or depression. So we've I suppose turned around the CBT, the cognitive behavioral therapies, and used the models, used the diaries, the challenges, the challenging of schemas, rules, thoughts that they need to challenge because they are rigid or distorted. So we're using all of the concepts known from the evidence, but we are shaping this world that is also visually pleasing and visually comforting. More recently, we were preoccupied about some of the pictures, how stigmatized some of the pictures maybe were to the clients, and then thinking about presenting, I suppose, distress in a different way when you're stuck with feeling shame or stuck with feeling overwhelmed or hopeless. So you're constantly sort of working at a lot of different parameters. This text on the left has an outline, says you're not alone. And in my mind, if we had more funds, we would maybe make little video clips of previous patients who had agreed to be filmed, and maybe have that as part of our video or the program. We currently don't have it, but this is how we're constantly thinking about developing and getting better practice that meets the needs of our clients. The data is coming out. It's very early doors. The early stages of this project was headed up by our research clinic with Mia Lichtenstein as the lead clinician, lead researcher, and a very small sample size where they validated a questionnaire that we are also using for, it's called let me just see, it's binge eating disorder questionnaire developed by Lichtenstein and her colleague Jakob Linnet. They documented pre and post effects, so there were significant reductions in both EDQ on the EDQ questionnaire and on the MDI. However, there were 36 respondents or participants, so we are accumulating data, and to date I'll show you the data we got for the last 2 years, so that corroborates what the earlier findings showed us. I wanted to just talk about 2 trends that are important for our service development. When it started out in the research clinic, we experienced that we were inundated with applications from people who wanted and needed our service. In fact, so many applicants came in through the door that it was impossible to have an open flow of applications. So whilst it was in research clinic, the referral route was open for 1, 2, 3 days, however many it took for the team to become inundated, and then there was a ceiling, and then they closed the door. So that actually meant that there were only once or twice a year that the site opened up to take on new incoming applicants. Since we took over in the clinic of the South region intervention service, we decided to address this. So the first, I suppose, success has been to have an open clinic. We are no longer inundated. We've managed to overcome, I suppose, the flooding that was going on in that pattern. So now we have a steady stream and the door is open for applicants. We do state that there's up to a month's wait if necessary, but that's not been necessary. then we've discovered this other effect, or this trend, and it's called the Wegovy effect. Well, I've labeled it. I'm sure you all have seen it as well. So we actually saw or witnessed a drop in applicants around March this year, following through till August. And maybe it's more the case in Denmark. I'm not sure, but we certainly saw that suddenly it seemed that we didn't get or receive as many applications, and my view is now that we're beginning to see them, and people are beginning to write that that GP will not prescribe Wegovy, or Wegovy has somehow not been successful, maybe because of private funds. So there are a variety of other factors now beginning to show up within this target group of binge eating. I think it's very important, even though we screen on paper. We are trained clinicians, so obviously we look at factors and we gather experiences and histories to make sense. We do write to patients and ask, is this the case or not? So there is a way of addressing things if we are in doubt. But it's important to emphasize that people with more severe needs, with higher levels of chronicity and comorbidity, they, in my viewpoint and in the clinic's viewpoint, do not fare well. Somehow the problems are endemic and need to be resolved in social relationships, and being in a format, in a paradigm where you write is somehow not enough or not sufficient to get close enough to address the emotional damage, disturbance, whatever was around at the origin of the development of the problematic behavior. So that's a standpoint, but I still think it's important to emphasize that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't do it digitally, but we need to be certain about what models might be used for. I know that there were some Spanish, Lithuanian, and Dutch visitors, I believe, and certainly Holland is progressed on schema therapy models, so that is something that is very helpful for this patient group. In addition to maybe compassion-focused therapies, if in Spain or in Lithuania, when you're working with more challenged and severe groups. Time is running out, so I need to press on. But as I said, you will see these notes, and you're very welcome to come back to me for additional questions. This is just to say that we are also attracting men, and really we're also attracting age groups that are above 58 and plus. The most common reason, the two most common reasons why we don't exclude are complexity. That means probably needing a higher step in the ladder, and then there's a pathway, 46.1%, where we had a screening where we are querying with the applicant whether they in fact needed something different, typically a further assessment or a referral from the GP. So some we refrain from concluding that it's complexity because we don't have sufficient information, but we enter in a dialogue with the letter suggesting that they are willing to opt into our service. However, if it is the case that we actually believe that they need something, then we advise them to go and seek the general practitioner for consultation. So 50% complete treatment and about 10%, well, 12 complete treatment prior to dropping out. These figures are a little lower than for our anxiety and depression populations, where we have a dropout of 20%. So I think there's room for improvement. But I think we have a lot more to learn, because this is a 20-week program. In anxiety and depression, we offer a 12-week program. So we have more of a window for variance and more of a window well, I suppose for improvements, but and this is something I'm keen to get closer to with as the data accumulates, to begin to see if there are patterns that we might address and better be able to step in and understand these pathways and these trajectories. Well, did it work? I mentioned the sample from Mia Lichtenstein's study. They looked at 36 pre and post, and scores on the BD questionnaire were pre 17 and post 11. So a significant change. I'll give you the range a little later. And there were significant amounts of overeating in the last 28 days, from 15 down to 7. BMI were not fully explored there. So in our data, for the past 2 years, we can see similar trends. We have a drop in the BDQ, and the ranges, as mentioned, 9 till 27. Well, it's ranges 0 to 28, and then there's a indicated range in the pre-treatment group. So there too is a drop, both at post-treatment at 3 months follow-up. So this is very positive, and also on the major depression inventory. Significant drops. We haven't tested clinically. I just had the data manager pull out these questions yesterday. So, but this is where we're heading: more numbers, stronger figures, and then we'll subject to statistical analysis. But it, I suppose, it goes strongly in line with what we saw from Mia's early study. There's some notes on what would need to be, in our opinion, vital in order to deliver good internet-based therapies. There's a lot around team identity and competencies, training. So we need to think a lot about ensuring that the workforce is ready, that the programs are accessible and that they are meaningful, and that we select the right people, and that we collect good data to help us understand this relatively new world. Here are the concluding mics. I'll stop here and get the mic open for questions instead. You're very welcome to look at the slides later on. I'll send them to Maya. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ulla. I will just try to turn the screen, maybe.
Thank you.
Yeah, now that you don't have to present anymore, we will just try so that you can see the audience.
Yes, I'll just see if I can stop sharing as well. That's it. Okay. Yeah. Hi, everyone. It's so much nicer when I can actually see you in the room. So there are limitations. There you are. Great to see you all.
Sorry about this.
We are advancing, but there are just things that we aren't advanced enough about yet. But yeah. You're there, and I hope you had good enough sound.
Yeah, we had. Any questions for Ulla? Yes, I will probably need to go close with the screen, otherwise she won't be able to hear it.
Okay.
Please.
Hello. And yes, congratulations with the fine results. The question for me is, when this program is done and it seems like it's really helpful, what's next step? Do you refer the patients to something else, to clinics for weight loss, to mental health in the municipalities, something third, or is the patient on their own after your 20-week program?
Very good question and good observation. So it depends on the case, and really for 5 months the therapist has become closely related to the client, so we'll be very mindful of what are the needs, and this also taps into this notion of stopping before the game ends. So actually getting going and with other services, if that's indicated. So when a patient needs something, the idea is really to stop earlier than just persevere with us. So if they've completed successfully, many patients will actually maybe not need further support, or we refer them on if it's obvious and you know, that there are still difficulties that intervene. So it's really a clinical gauge, you know, and often in dialogue. We do, although we don't have any contact, we do take all contacts to the electronic health journal. So the patient has got a health journal that documents the engagement, and that becomes a document that we advise for them to take along to the GP to document that they've taken part, and that can often help. In an ideal world, we'd be referring directly, and GPs would be referring directly, or other mental health carers would be mindful, and we would have a network where we would be able to communicate better. What's really important is to be, I don't know, to be firmly that, you know, when more help is called for, we say no. we actually, you know, and often we meet patients who think maybe this is just the right solution, and they become very pleading. But sometimes it is about not giving into that when you can see a very long history of unsuccessful attempts. Then it calls for something more. So we make use of the local spiseforening, the local voluntary NGOs, of course, in the kommuner, in the boroughs and the municipalities. So we actually have different lists of services, so it helps the patient direct them to good help.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think I saw another question. No? No further questions? Okay. Then I don't have to take you for a walk, Ulla.
No.
So thank you very much.
As I said, you're very welcome. A lot of information, very fast paced, but I will forward the slideshows, and you're more than welcome to get hold of me and take the dialogue in a different place. So thank you. Have a good visit. Thank you. Yeah, that's very kind. Thank you. Enjoy the day.
Thank you, Ulla. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.